Okay, this is the episode that I was referring to in episode 13 that hopefully you guys listen to at least part of that. And but if you haven't, in 13 I talked about how I'd already recorded episode 12, but I forgot to do the album recommendation. Since it's one that I did by myself, I like to always do an album recommendation in those where I don't have a guest. And I because being busy with the holidays and all that kind of stuff, and I never got around to doing that, and I ended up recording 13 before I was finished with 12. So I went ahead and put that up, and it's funny. I was actually not even planning on calling it 13, but after I had already rendered it and everything, I called it 13. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna leave it. I'm just gonna call it episode 13 because that's what it is, and I'm just gonna go back and do 12 later. Get it up there later. So what you're about to hear after the album recommendation is something that I recorded. Let's see, as I'm talking to you today, it's been about a week or so. Anyways, hope you guys enjoy that, or get a little philosophical at times, because whenever I don't have a guest, I don't have anybody to rein me back in, so I just kind of go off on a lot of crazy topics, and I don't know. I feel like it's important to remind you guys. I don't want anyone to think that I think I have have the best idea about how things should go and all this kind of things. I'm just someone that I just like to really explore things and explore new ideas and all that kind of stuff, and that's how I like doing my show, because that's what I enjoy doing. And like I've said many times, if you're going to do something like this, if you're going to put out some kind of any type of content, art, whatever it is, as I mentioned in episode 13, do it how you would want to do it. If nobody listens to it, so be it. But that's the only way to go. Just do what you would want to do, and that's what I try to do to the best of my abilities. But anyway, so the album of the show of the week, or whatever you want to call it, is Can't Buy a Thrill by Steely Dan. That has to be one of my favorite albums. That album just oozes classic rock. I mean, that album almost just defines what classic rock is from the 70s. And I believe, I should have checked on this, but I believe 1973 was when that album was released, and that was, of course, a great time for rock. I mean, it was just, man, great time, and it oozes that time period, just start to finish, just a great album. It just puts you in a different place, and it really illustrates the difference in music now, how it's changed so much. I just a lot of, there's always been really crappy popular music. That doesn't matter any time frame. There's always been that, but it seems like every genre has been hijacked by pop. There's a pop version of every genre, and that's a little bit frustrating. But for people like me, there's still all that great music from back in the 60s, 70s, and there's some good stuff in the 80s and 90s too. But man, especially the 70s, they really perfected rock and roll in the 70s, and did some other cool things with it in the 80s and 90s. But that was a really great album. If you like classic rock at all, you got to check that out. Steely Dan, Can't Buy a Thrill. It's a great one. But anyways, I'll let you check out the radio show, and of course I didn't do my usual introduction because I did that in what you're about to hear. So anyways, hope you guys enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys later. All right, welcome back to the Gun Culture Radio Show, and as always, I remind you guys that you can check the link in the description if you want to download the podcast, if it makes it easier for you guys to listen to it that way. But yeah, gun culture. I mean, culture is everywhere. Everywhere you look, you see some element of culture. It kind of flavors our everyday life and human experience in good ways and in bad ways sometimes. And sometimes the way culture can kind of work against us is like, for example, have you guys ever been to one of those places where they've got those like plywood stand-up things where it'll be like a picture of, I don't know, Buzz Lightyear or a Shrek or something like that, and it's got a hole cut in the face, and you go around behind it and stick your face through, and you know, you look like you're whoever it is. Well, if you got your face stuck through that thing, and let's say it's Shrek, and you got your face stuck through Shrek's face, and if you look down at your body, you're gonna look a lot like Shrek, right? You know, you can't see your regular body because you got your face stuck through that thing. Sometimes culture can actually be like that, and it can actually confuse us and make us think that some things are real when really they're just made up. So it's, you know, something to keep in mind, because culture is it's a tricky one, you know, but it's everywhere. It's not good or bad. It's a part of us, you know, and really culture is just it's just patterns that we kind of develop over time, you know, and because it, you know, it can have that you know, bad side to it. I like to try to be mindful of it. I think that, you know, culture is good or bad, and I think it's important to be mindful of as much as you possibly can, but especially culture, because it does have negative impacts, and it has a lot of negative impacts to us as gun people. Our gun culture is as well as a lot of other cultures, but gun culture especially is under attack constantly, as I don't have to remind you guys. And there was this guy that had a quote that I like, and I took it and made it my own. Basically, I changed it around a little bit because I think it relates to something in the gun culture, and my version of it. I'm not taking credit for it because I basically just stole this and adapted it for something for my own agenda. and what it is gun ownership causes psychotic behavior in those who have never owned guns. And basically what I'm saying by that is people who have never had experience with guns, and of course you could apply that, you could say the same thing about shooting or you know, whatever it is, self-defense or whatever, but in a nutshell, gun ownership, because that's what people have a problem with. You know, there's people who don't want us to own certain guns, but they've never owned guns themselves, right? So how can they know that it's bad if they've never even owned guns? You know, and there's so many things like that when it comes to everything, that we say, oh, that's bad, that person shouldn't have that, or he shouldn't do that, but we don't even know anything about it ourselves. We never even had the experience with it. I mean, if someone has never been in combat before and he's teaching you about combat, would you trust anything he says? No. But we do that all the time when it comes to political issues, and it's just crazy. You know, we you know, how much people will trust someone's opinion that doesn't have any experience with it. You know, and that is just rampant in the fight against, you know, the fight for our gun rights. That's something that we constantly face, is people who know nothing about guns, no experience with them, want to take them away from us. Now, when it comes to the politicians, I mean, ultimately the politicians aren't the ones taking our gun rights away. It's those millions of people who think we shouldn't have guns. So those are the ones that I'm really worried about. I mean, you know, you should vote, of course, but where you're going to make the biggest impact is in a grassroots way. Because if everybody is for guns, then, you know, it doesn't matter how much the politicians want to get rid of them. They just can't. They just can't do it because of the numbers. So these people, your average Joe Blow that has never shot guns, never been around guns, he assumes to know more about them than you do. He assumes to be an expert on the subject. Oh, now you can't have guns because, you know, if you own those, the temptation is just it's just too strong. You know, well, maybe that guy needs to be in jail then. He's never even owned guns, and he thinks that he shouldn't have them. Maybe he shouldn't own guns. You know, but it's just crazy that people think that because you have something that, like, you know, people are just so powerless that they can't resist the temptation to do something bad with them. I mean, that's just crazy. That's just crazy. I mean, it's a form of mind control, is because you're telling people that they're like children, basically. They can't they're not responsible for their own thoughts. And it really sends a bad message out in the universe that people are not responsible for their own thoughts, and that's just not good. People have a lot more power than they realize. And that's, that's just fundamental right there. But yeah, so I mean, in a nutshell, people they try to assume to know about things that they just don't have any experience with, and it's even worse when they're trying to take those things away. Like with guns, that one really gets me. In the gun debate, it always comes down to the age-old argument that will forever echo throughout the universe, and that is freedom versus safety. And that will just be a constant battle in any society. I don't care if it's colonized Mars and 20,000 years from now. I mean, that's going to be an issue. It just is. It's going to go back, just like liberal and conservative. It's going to go back and forth and back and forth. This constant pendulum. And so, to keep that thing swinging in the direction of freedom, which I would hope most of us listening to this show would want, versus safety, then we've really got to be vigilant in that. And it's not just with voting. I think that can be a now, voting isn't a misstep, but thinking that just voting by itself is going to make a difference, that's kind of a misstep to me. I think that if you look at a lot of big movements that have happened, it hasn't really been a political effort. It's been grassroots. Best example to that is the guns. I mean, the whole reason that we kept our rights after Sandy Hook is basically for two reasons. The main reason, the existence of the internet and social media. Without that, I think that things would be a lot different right now. And two, obviously internet, social media is just a tool, so it was implemented correctly. And after that happened, everyone was forced to decide how they felt about guns. And I know it sounds crazy, but self-defense is kind of a sensible way to it's a sensible thing to care about. And when everybody was forced to decide, should we have guns? Should we have these scary military, guns and all this kind of stuff? People kind of decided, that was bad. That was really bad what happened. But, if I was in that situation, I would have wanted to not just be a victim. I would have wanted to be able to defend myself. And people kind of spoke, and man, I mean, we have so many new people on our side. I mean, it used to be whenever I was growing up, I mean, if you were a gun person, you were an outcast. I mean, didn't really know. There were some people in my family that, they weren't like anti-gun, of course. I didn't really know anyone in my family that was really that anti-gun or anything, but they weren't really into guns. They were like, oh yeah, guns, they exist, whatever, not a big problem. But man, it's like everybody I know now, was buying guns, and they're constantly asking me, what gun should I buy? And not just from the YouTube thing, totally independent of that. Just so many people are interested in guns now, and that's strictly 100% from a grassroots. Well, nothing is 100%, but it's basically mostly from a grassroots effort. That's where things get done. Grassroots. You always hear people say, what are the two things you don't ever talk about with strangers or mixed company or whatever is religion and politics. I say to hell with that. I don't like to offend people. Is the thing. I don't like to hurt people's feelings. But there's ways that you can talk about those things without hurting people's feelings. You don't have to just come out and say, oh, I think this or I think that. I mean, you bring it down to, I'm not really talking about religion. I mean, but that's part of that thing. I'm really talking about politics right now. I like to bring it down to fundamental things. I don't say things about I'm not going to talk about specifics like the assault weapons ban or whatever back when that was trying to be pushed through. Just bring it down to the fundamentals. Freedom over safety. Ask people in a family that haven't come around yet to the fight for our gun rights. Ask them about that argument, that the freedom versus safety. Would you like to leave your life up? I mean, it's going to be up to chance anyways, but would you like to feel like you have to rely on someone else to save your life? Someone that has to be called on the phone, that you have to wait an unknown amount of time for them to show up? Or would you like to at least have a tool that gives you the chance to maybe protect yourself? It may not happen. You may still that undesired outcome may still be a reality, but you'll at least have a chance. And another thing too that I think is a huge benefit of carrying guns that I feel like I'm kind of getting off topic. It's kind of how it goes with these. Whenever I'm doing a radio show by myself, especially, I mean, we get off topic even when I have Derek on and stuff. But sometimes it's hard to keep from going down all these different pathways and losing track of exactly what I was talking about. But hopefully you guys get something interesting in there in the process. But anyways, one of the things I think gets that doesn't get respected enough is as far as a benefit of carrying a gun, or even having a gun in your home, but especially carrying a gun, is just being able to relax. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I have a gun. I know that just because I have a gun doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be able to protect myself every time. But I've got the necessary tools. Like, there's no worse feeling than being caught without the right tools. Even your car breaks, you get a flat tire, and you don't have a four-way. You don't have a jack, or you don't even have a spare. It's a horrible feeling. Even though your life doesn't depend on it. It just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel good. Even if let's say you don't even know how to change a tire, but you got the tools. It's like, okay, well, at least maybe I can figure it out. I got the right stuff to do it. But when you just don't have the right tools, you don't even have anywhere near the necessary tools to complete the task, and especially when it comes down to something where your life depends on it. I mean, that's a scary thing that's going to just nag you. You're going to try to suppress that. Like, if you don't carry a gun, you're gonna try to suppress it or forget it, but it's going to nag you, because that if someone comes around that corner, with them, pulls out a knife wanting your money, or somebody starts shooting at you, or someone thinks that you're someone else and starts taking shots at you, or whatever it is, and you don't have any of the tools that you need to defend yourself in that situation. A gun, is the only thing that's going to help, really. That's not a good feeling. That's not a good feeling at all. And and we know how those kinds of things can happen. I mean, nothing like that's ever happened to me. Nothing like that's really ever happened to anyone that I know, unless they've been in the military. But just knowing that you have a gun and you have the right tools for the job, if something happens, even if you don't have any training, you might not be able to shoot at all, but just the fact that you have the tool that you would need in that situation, it's a big relief. It's a really big relief, and it just frees you up. There's just too much fear floating around, in our culture. There's a whole fear culture, which I won't get into right now, but that really helps combat that. It's like, okay, at the end of the day, I have a gun. I got something that shoots back. Whether it'll help me or not, who knows? But I got it, and I got the right tools for the job. And another thing too that I just don't understand about the anti-gun perspective, because I work really hard at trying to be as open-minded as I possibly can to everything, all possibilities, no matter how crazy that they sound. I don't care what it is. I'm open to it. I try to look at things with fresh eyes, like because there's something from Star Wars where it was like Yoda says something like, first you have to unlearn before you can learn. I'm sure I mentioned something like that before on the show, but that's so true. You have to really see something how it is. Sometimes you have to unlearn what you have already learned, because that's how something seems crazy. Like if for example, if you went back in time, 1,000 years ago or something like that, and you showed them a radio, they're going to and you turned it on, and somehow there was still radio. Okay, all right, let me back up. Okay, you don't go back in time. You find someone who's been living in a cave or out in the jungle, and they're totally totally separated from any form of society whatsoever, and they don't have any technology. If someone like that even exists still today, you find that person, you show them a radio, you turn it on, it starts playing music. They're going to think that all that music they're going to think it's contained in that box. They're going to think, wow, there's a small band of people making noises inside that box. How is that? And then when you tell them, well, actually, there's this signal that you can't see, and it's flying through the air as we speak, and it's being intercepted by this box, and it's being interpreted, and you're hearing music that's happening somewhere else. They would say, you are insane. You are insane. That's impossible, right? Because they've never seen anything like that. So it's got to be impossible. There's no way. They've never seen anything remotely like that. And why are they supposed to believe something that they can't even see? That doesn't make any sense, right? But we know the technology behind how the radio works, so it doesn't seem crazy at all, So it's something to keep in mind, because I think there's things like that to us that we probably just don't understand. And if we did see them, we would think, that's got to be that. No way, not possible, So because of that, I try to be open-minded, even to when it comes to our gun rights. I've thought about it many times. I try to unlearn, as I all that I just went through. I try to unlearn what I've already learned and try to look at it with new eyes. And still, I'm biased. I'm extremely biased, of course, when it comes to guns. I grew up with them my entire life. I shot my first gun when I was 3 years old. Couldn't get any more biased when it comes to guns. But I still feel like it's a great exercise, and I try so hard to unlearn everything that I have learned, temporarily at least, so that I can look at it objectively. And I'm sure that it's impossible for me to get rid of my bias, but still, at least I make the effort. And the thing that I just can't understand is, okay, so most people would agree probably that there's a reason to preserve life, right? There's a reason for us to, there's a reason, depending on what your background is, there's a reason. We all think there's at least some reason for us to be here. There's something that we're supposed to do. So if that's the case, I would think most people would agree on that. Life is not pointless. Then there's a reason, there's an incentive to try to keep it going, right? There's a reason to, when you're met with a situation where your life might end, there's a reason to try to prevail and keep it going, so you can fulfill your purpose or whatever that might be, right? So we agree that self-defense then is important. So it's hard for me to imagine someone being anti self-defense. That's just I don't understand that. Like who would get punched in the face and then not punch someone back? Self-defense. I would think that would just be totally universal. All of mankind, I would think, would be able to understand that. Every animal understands it, So I would think that we would also understand it. And I think most people do, whether you're pro-gun or anti-gun. So with that being said, okay, self-defense is important. All right. Well, what are some threats that can risk our lives? Okay, fire. We've got fire extinguishers. We have codes in buildings, fire escapes. We have an entire force that's paid for by our taxes to help us, to rescue us from a building that's on fire, or to put a fire out keep it from spreading. We take lots of measures, to protect ourselves from fire. And fires typically are only a risk, inside of a building. So we don't really need to carry anything around with us necessarily. I guess it could help, because fire is only a threat if it's if it's consuming something large that we can't escape from. All right, so we have to rely on other forces to help protect us from that, or strategically placed fire extinguishers. So we've got fire pretty well covered. So there's fire. Water, we can drown, right? So that's why it's important to be able to swim. Water's pretty avoidable. It's pretty easy if you can't swim for some reason. It's pretty easy to stay away from water if you absolutely have to. I mean, you could get caught in a hurricane or something like that, but water's a pretty, easy threat, of course. And then, of course, there's, our bodies are fairly fragile, so things can fall on us. That's not as big of a thing that we worry about very much, because it's just not as likely to happen, because we've set up our society and the structure of our cities and all these different things to avoid that from happening. We try to build our buildings really solid in areas where there's lots of earthquakes. We build our buildings so that they can withstand a lot of shock and things like that, and that works pretty well for the most part. If you're driving down the road, if there's a potential for falling rocks, they have a sign, right? So that pretty much eliminates that from being a possibility, because there's a sign, it tells you. All right, so and there's so that's not as big of a thing. And then there's sharp objects, right? Stabbing weapons, knives, and things like that. And that's a tough one to protect yourself against. We're not talking about guns yet. Let's say without guns. Let's say guns don't exist right now in this universe that we're talking about. Someone can really get you with a sharp object. The only way to protect yourself against another person who wants to hurt you with a sharp object is if you are more skilled than them, basically, or just lucky that day. Back in the days when everybody had swords, you better know how to handle a sword, because if the other guy's better than you, he's gonna get you. And if he doesn't get you, you may get cut up real bad. So that requires a lot of skill, and also someone even just with their bare hands. Still, like, you have to be more skilled than them. It requires a lot of skill to survive an attack with another person. Whether it's bare hands or hand weapons, other than non-firearms, non-distance weapons, and stuff like that. So, but today in our society, the most likely threat, and I should have, when I was going through all the things, I should have said other people. That's what I should have said. But I didn't have all this pre-written out or anything. But yeah, so like fire, water, other people. There's probably animals, of course. Is another one, but which guns is a good one for that too. But so other people is what I'm talking about now. Okay, so other people have the potential to wield, any number of weapons, whether it's edged weapons or guns, explosives. That's a tough one right there. But so if someone else, so we, you think most people could agree that it's very possible for someone to obtain some type of distance weapon, right, where they don't have to be arm's reach to take your life with it, whether it's a crossbow or any kind of bow or a spear. Even I don't think anybody's walking around on the streets with a spear or anything, but it's possible. People get creative, and but the thing is, you can't deny the possibility, whether you're pro-gun or anti-gun, that someone could get a gun. And what's the best way to defend yourself against someone who has the potential to cause serious bodily harm or death to you from a distance? You can't get to them. You can't punch them or stab them, get them with a sword or any of that kind of stuff. So you have to respond to their attack from a distance. Well, a firearm is the best way to do that. And I just can't understand how anyone would not want people to be able to have that option. Their thing is like, well, that's what we got the police for. Well, the police can't be everywhere. They can't. I mean, that's just impossible. Even if the police force was 10 times the size that it is now, I mean, they still, even if there was a cop within sight of you, I mean, those types of situations can happen so fast. I mean, there's no way that you could just know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're safe, that you're taken care of. And you never can, even with a gun. But at least if you have a gun, you have some chance. And then of course, so anyways, based on all of that, it's really hard for me to imagine anyone being able to argue a point saying that like people should not be allowed to have at least some sort of gun to defend themselves in their everyday lives and carry it with them, because there's no other way to consistently know that you can have the tools to preserve your life, right, in almost any situation. Okay, then we get into the argument of which guns. Well, then you come down to a point where you have to decide, okay, what is reasonable. I hate to use the word reasonable because the anti-gun crowds, they use that against us, right? They say, reasonable gun restrictions and all these kinds of things. But you know what? I'm not afraid of their words. They don't scare me. I don't care. But it's true. There is a line that has to be drawn somewhere. What is a reasonable weapon that we could face, in our daily lives that we would need to be able to defend ourselves against? Now, to me, that's small arms. But some other people may disagree. I don't know. I mean, technically, it could be anything. I mean, technically, some gangster could have a T-72 tank or something like that rolling down the street with it. And I don't care what kind of rifle you got. You're not going to do anything against that. I mean, yeah, it could happen. I mean, it definitely could happen. But it's so incredibly unlikely. I mean, incredibly unlikely. You're more likely to get struck by lightning walking down the street than be met with some kind of armored vehicle. All right, so I could see making the case for that being a little bit unreasonable, that we don't necessarily need armor like, I'm not going to say armor penetrating rounds, definitely, but we don't necessarily need anti-tank weapons, is what I'm trying to say. Whatever, bazookas and things like that. I mean, to me, that I could see making a case for that being unreasonable. But I think any type of small arms, any type of rifles, machine guns, fully automatic, short barreled rifles, like that whole thing is ridiculous. I mean, like a criminal's not just gonna hack the barrel off if he wants a shorter barrel on a shotgun or his rifle. That's just crazy. And plus, what's it matter if he can hide it better? I mean, a lot of times these shootings happen when they just bust up in some place and start shooting people. So that just seems ridiculous to me. But I do think that there does need to be some type of line that we draw where we say, this is what's reasonable for us to have. This, okay, we get it. The average person maybe shouldn't be able to have it. And here's the thing: the average person can get bazookas and anti-tank weapons and C4 and all these kinds of things. Of course, once you go through all the federal hoops to acquire those things, you kind of become not the average person, because not many people have those licenses and things. But you can get that stuff. It just, you have to go through a lot of hoops. So if you really want that stuff, you can get it. I'm not trying to say that no one should be able to have that kind of stuff, but I do think that there could be negative impacts if you can walk into a gun shop and buy C4, hand grenades, rocket launchers, all like AT4s, things like, if you can buy things like that just off the shelf, that could have negative impacts, definitely. Because while guns are extremely widely available on the black market, those kinds of things aren't necessarily. You can get them. There are criminal organizations that have RPGs and all kinds of things like that. But we don't live in the kind of society where just everybody walks around with that kind of stuff. That's not necessarily all that reasonable of a thing to face. So it's hard for me to imagine how someone can be against people wanting to defend themselves against the kinds of things that you're likely to face in a lethal confrontation. It's just beyond me. I try to look at it as objectively as I possibly can, and that kind of bled over into a whole nother argument, that something that I've mentioned on past shows that I know that people have discussed in the comment sections and stuff on the radio shows about that. Like where should the line be drawn? And that's one that, I'm not real sure about. I know that, there's some people out there that they think that we should be allowed to have anything. If we want an Apache helicopter, we should be allowed to have that. But, well, first of all, like, not many people would even be able to afford one, first of all. So the problem with that would be, corporations would be buying them, and that, I don't know. It's kind of, I don't know. It's hard for me to see a lot of really good arguments for just a total free for all when it comes to weapons. But I can definitely get behind anything that I consider small arms. Explosives. I don't really see a really big argument for like, I mean, explosives, of course, could mean anything from a firecracker to, a nuclear bomb, of course. So I don't mean to generalize, but as far as explosives in the sense of like, grenades, claymores, and C4, and those kind of things. The problem with weapons like that is they are indiscriminate. If people have, they're just too indiscriminate. We can't have people throwing grenades in a self-defense situation. You know what I mean? I can't really think of a civilian self-defense situation where you're going to need a grenade. I just can't. I can't think of one. Maybe there is, but I can't really think of one. Now the argument that people make is, the reason for the Second Amendment is so that we can, defend ourselves against the government. Now here's the thing where that's a really tricky issue, because yes, and back in those days, the civilians they had all the weaponry that the government had, which wasn't much. It was cannons and muskets basically, and they had that stuff. But it gets more complicated now because our technology has far exceeded that. I mean, we can't, if the big one comes, and it will, as Derek says, we can't expect to be fighting the government with aircraft carriers and fighter jets and all this kind of stuff. And here's the thing to remember too when it comes to that. If the government becomes so tyrannical that it's going to be fighting its people in the streets, they're going to be extremely short-handed. That's the thing. They're not going to have all these Apache helicopters and aircraft carriers and all this kind of stuff to attack us with, because all the people that know how to operate that stuff are going to be on our side. So I don't really see that as a big need necessarily. Of course, there we go. That word "need" again is tricky, but again, I'm not afraid of their words. So that's not really something that I worry about personally, but I'm definitely open to all opinions on that. And if some of you guys have a different take on it, that something I haven't heard before, I'd love to hear it. But as far as needing that serious heavy weapons, for that time, if it comes and the government becomes increasingly more overreaching and all this kind of thing. We need Apache helicopters and missiles and Abrams tanks and all this kind of stuff. I just don't really see that as, it's not that I don't see that as a possibility. That's not something that could ever happen. I just don't see that as a threat, because I think that most of the people in the military are going to be on the right side of history, I think. So that's not necessarily a concern I have. Another thing too, when it comes to, people seem to be more worried about fighting the government with bullets than they are about affecting changes. Just like I was talking about earlier with voting. Voting is important, but grassroots is where things really happen. If you're hunkered down in your bunker with 20,000 rounds of ammo just waiting for the big one, you're not helping anybody. When that big one hits, and it will, everything's going to be basically just, everything's going to be screwed. Like, we've gotten so reliant on all the services and all the different things in society, and some of it's good stuff, it's not going to go like people think. It's just not going to happen like people think. If you really want to make a difference, talk to people. Don't be so terrified of offending people that you don't talk about politics or you don't talk about things. That's where things are gonna change. It's gonna be grassroots. The changes are gonna start with the people that you know, and it's gonna spread. It's already spreading. We're getting our gun rights back. It's even getting to the point where we're about to be on offense, and we've got to stay on offense, because when we're on defense, then we're not getting anything, any of these draconian things removed. Of course, we had some losses definitely in the last election, but especially with the craziness in Washington and all that kind of stuff. But it's going to happen. There's some states where there's just not many people on our side, and I can almost see an argument for for just letting those states do what they want. We are the United States. I can see the argument for if California doesn't want to have guns, fine. They don't want to have guns, but here in Tennessee we'll have all the guns we want. I can see that argument, but then again, it's kind of crazy. Like if Tennessee, carry a gun in your car, even if you don't have a carry permit. You got a carry permit, carry a gun most places. There's a few you can't and everything. But man, as soon as you step foot in New Jersey with that thing, you're going to jail. And it's just kind of crazy to think that the same types of activities in one state will literally ruin your life in another state. It's just crazy. Like me and Dad were making some jokes whenever we were out west. We stopped at Four Corners, and let's see, I was standing on Colorado and he was standing on Utah, and we were making some jokes, and I'll see if you guys can figure out what jokes we were making, but they had to do with a few different political issues, but it was that was fun. And that reminds me of another thing that I'm going to close the show out with. Some of you guys, of course, may have seen the recent video we did, the pot smoking video. Our little clever play on words. That's oh so clever, of course. And reading a lot of the comments and things. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to tell you what I think about that issue. But I do want to say one thing, and that is that every group, every facet of culture, every little group is always going to be defined by its most extreme example. And the same is true for gun nuts. Not as much as it used to be. It used to be a lot worse, because gun people were more in the closet when it came to that. And now that there's so many gun people around, the public is getting a little bit better idea of what gun people really like. So that's changing. That's a good thing. But still, to a lot of people, gun people are that most extreme gun nut, right? That's got a bunker under their house, and they've got millions of rounds of ammo, and they're constantly plotting their revenge against the government, and they're racist and sexist and all this kind of stuff. And those people are out there. I'm not going to say they don't exist. They do. I guarantee you that they exist. But they are the exception, not the rule. But that is because those are the people that get the most attention. That's how the other side views all gun people, because those are the ones they notice. And it's the same thing for other groups. There's other groups that, and especially if it's a group that is involved in something that is considered very taboo, or maybe it's even something that is illegal, that is people are trying to get rights for. The type of, here's the thing, see, if it's something that's really taboo, whether it's because it's illegal or because it's just very culturally not accepted, the people that you're going to see, that you're going to be made aware of, that are a part of that group, are going to be the people that don't care about that. And those people are going to be your most extreme example. They're going to be people that they don't really have anything to lose. They, maybe they don't even have a job. They never really done anything in their life, so they ain't got nothing to lose. So they don't care who knows it. They don't care who knows that they do that or they're involved in that. So those are going to be your most extreme example of whatever that group is. So when you see that person, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, look at those guys. They're all like that, But that's not really true, because there's tons of people who are involved in that, but you don't ever hear about them or know about them. They're under the radar because they work regular jobs and they do regular things and they do have things to lose. So they're a lot more careful and secretive about it. And that's how it used to be in the gun culture, and that's changing. But that's something that that all the comment section kind of made me think of, and I think that's something that's kind of important to remember. But anyways, I'll conclude this show, and I'm gonna try to get more guests. The way I'd like to do it is, I don't know if it will always happen this way. It just kind of depends on how busy I am or what me and Dad have going on, if we're going out of town or what we're doing. But I'm going to try to do one a week, which I think I've mentioned that before, and I'm going to try to have Derek on twice a month if I can. So every other week, something like that. And then have another guest on. So there's going to be a show. So if there's 4 shows a month, basically, in a nutshell, I'm going to try to have 2 with Derek, and there might be someone else on with him, but at least 2 with Derek, 1 with someone else where Derek isn't there, and then 1 just by myself. That's the plan, at least. Now, it may not end up working out that way, but as of right now, that's what I'm going to try to do. I kind of like that. I kind of like the way that works out. So I'm trying to do them every week. They may not be, uploaded just spot on, every Monday or every Sunday or whatever, because it kind of depends on what I've got going on and stuff like that. But anyways, I hope you guys are enjoying the shows, and I'm about to head out to the Hickok 45 compound and play with some guns and bring them to you guys, and hopefully you guys will find that stuff interesting, and hope you guys are finding some of the stuff I'm talking about on the radio shows interesting. I'm not very good at this whole radio thing yet, and it's kind of, if for those of you guys who've never done anything like this, it's kind of tricky sometimes to articulate things that you want to say, because it's kind of distracting, because there's a lot of things that you're thinking about, at least me, because I'm not used to it. Because I'm like thinking about the fact that I'm talking on the radio, and what I say, matters, because I don't want it to sound too stupid or not. So I'm thinking about that, and also trying to think of like what I want to say and where I want it to go, and have I already said this? So it becomes kind of chaotic, but I think hopefully it'll get smoother over time, and anyways, I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I appreciate you guys checking them out, and I like to see your comments in the section and the comment section, and hear your views and hear how you disagree with me, and all that kind of stuff, because I don't get offended when people disagree with me. I like it. I like to hear other people's opinions. What I don't like is whenever people get angry about it, because they think whenever people think that they're right, that's what I get a little bit upset about sometimes. Of course you're going to favor your own opinion. You're going to think that your opinion is the best, or otherwise it wouldn't be your opinion, obviously. But when people just know that they know more than someone else, or they know that they're right and the other person is wrong, and it ends up being this like road rage kind of thing going on, I hate to see that, because that's what keeps us fighting against each other, instead of fighting, to make our time here better. That's all we're really trying to do, right? We just want to make our time here better. While we're here, whatever we think our purpose is, we want it to be better for all of us. That just comes down to that. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and I'll keep doing them, and talk to you guys later.